there have been literal tears shed at times about the cut and the effort that goes into it. We probably put somewhere around combined, I would guess, 40 hours or so into every single one. But people love it, and we love to do it, and something we're proud of.
Hello and welcome to the Aptive Podcast Studio. This is the Loyal Cougars Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Edmonds. Now, today we have a special episode where we spotlight the Associate Athletic Director over Creative Strategy at BYU Athletics, Tyson Hutchins. Now, Tyson, in my opinion, has overseen some of the best digital initiatives of any athletic department in the country, including the cut. Now, I talked with Tyson about his journey from BYU to Clemson and back to BYU, plus the transformation of digital strategy within BYU Athletics and what exactly goes into the cut. We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll get a sneak peek of the future of the cut. That's all in my interview with Tyson Hutchins. It's always been my personal opinion that BYU Athletics has one of the best digital marketing teams and social media strategy teams in the country. And so I am privileged to be joined today by Tyson Hutchins, Associate Athletic Director over Creative Strategy. And you've been at BYU for quite a while. Thanks, first of all, for joining us. And I first wanted to ask you, you've been at BYU since 2016. You did take a break, not a break, but you did a stint at Clemson for a bit. But, first of all, how did you get into digital marketing or creative social media? What was your kind of passion that led to that?
Absolutely, yeah. First and foremost, I appreciate the high praise. That is the standard that we try and meet as well. So I'm glad that comes through. But really for me, it's quite the story. I'm jealous. A lot of kids who get into creative work and do it professionally, they have some story that's like, when I was 10 years old, I picked up a camera and I was into it ever since. And I do not have that story at all. I grew up playing sports and went to BYU and was planning to go to law school the entire time. And then all of a sudden I see this social media internship in the athletic department. And frankly, I didn't even know that existed. Like, I loved social media at the time. At the time, it was like Twitter and Vine and like early Facebook and things like that. And I was like, this is cool. This is something that I could get into. And so applied for the internship, got it, and quickly was like, this is way better than law school. I'm definitely this is what I want to do with my career. And so from that point, kind of just scaled into things. Was technically the second creative social media hire in BYU Athletics. And it just kind of escalated from there. And now we're here with everything we got going on.
Yeah, and you say escalated. I think that takes some effort on your part, right? Like I see you on social media, just your personal social media accounts, and you're always talking about new technology, new software, new equipment for creating content. And I think that's huge because you're clearly passionate about what you do. And I think when you say it escalates to or evolves into what you are now, I think that's a big part of it. What drives your passion for creating content?
Yeah, it's a good question. I love the unique opportunity we have to tell stories that most people would never see. I think that's probably what keeps me going the most, or like kind of fuels this creative energy that I have, and I hope kind of disseminates through our department, is just this opportunity that we have to tell stories that would be really difficult for someone in broadcast or someone who may not be as close to the teams as our staff can be, to tell some of those stories. And that's what fuels it. I love working in college athletics. I love the opportunity that we have to tell these unique stories, whether it's a quarterback at a predominantly LDS university who happens to be Jewish, or whether that's something that someone else has gone through, or it's a new and emerging platform, or one that's about to die like TikTok or something like that. That combined with kind of my just creative curiosity, those two things combined probably are what drive it the most.
So you started at BYU. You mentioned off air, David Almodovar was a big part of that. Yeah. And shout out to David. After BYU, you spent 3 years?
Yeah.
At BYU, you went to Clemson.
Yeah.
What drew you to Clemson?
Yeah, it's a funny story, but one that I love telling. It's actually something I tell a lot to young creatives and different things of the story of how it happened. Myself and Stuart Call and David Almadova were kind of the first like social media creative hires at BYU, and at the time there was really only a handful of schools that were doing like a stellar job, in my opinion, and it's bias. Clemson was the best. And then there were a couple others, like Ohio State was doing a really good job. South Carolina did a really good job. There were a couple others that really did, but I felt like Clemson was the standard. And so as Stuart and myself predominantly were trying to build out this creative staff at BYU and showcase what it could do, Clemson is one that we pointed to a lot, and especially their intern program with undergraduate students of how they were utilizing them to do really, really great stuff. And so I had reached out to who became my boss at Clemson, Jonathan Gant, and just kind of picked his brain and some other people's brains at Clemson of, hey, how did you go about building this creative structure? And it was a great conversation, and we learned a lot and kind of stayed in touch. And 3 years later, there was a job opportunity at Clemson, and they knew that we had kind of modeled exactly what we were doing after kind of Clemson's model. And so that escalated into me getting an opportunity at Clemson, and I'm forever grateful for the opportunity that I had there. A lot of people get an MBA or something like that. I joke around that like I went to Clemson. Like that's my equivalent of that. And it was a phenomenal experience and truly was formative to where I am today. There's no question.
Well, and Clemson at the time, they went to a lot of venues, a lot of high caliber games. 100%. Do you have a favorite game or venue that you visited?
So I was there for a couple semifinal wins, lost a national championship to Joe Burrow. That was sure memorable in a different kind of way. Probably my favorite place that I went to during my time there was Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. I always, you hear about Notre Dame and all the prowess and everything that it is. And growing up, I always thought it's kind of overrated. Like I'm not sure I understand the hype. And then I went there and I was like, this is very cool like that. And so Notre Dame holds a special place in my heart. And then I'll be honest, the atmosphere at Clemson on a game day is just second to none. And so those are probably, as far as places or venues or things like that really stick out during my time there.
We'll be back with Tyson for more in just a minute. But first, a message from Aptiv. Aptiv believes that every home should be enjoyed. They tailor their pest control treatment plans to target pests when and where they're most active. Plus, if you see pest activity between treatments, Aptiv will return to take care of the problem at no additional cost. It's their way of making sure every customer is satisfied and every pest is controlled. If pests stay away, Aptiv is why. Visit goaptiv.com/loyalcougars or call 844-966-4787 and mention this promotion to get your initial treatment for just $29. That's goaptiv.com/loyalcougars or call 844-966-4787. Get home field advantage with Aptiv. So I don't know if this was you specifically that shot this, but I think it was. There was a video of Trevor Lawrence walking out of the tunnel, and the camera's just kind of following behind him.
Yeah.
And it's weird to think like that went so viral. I mean, it showed up in my timeline, and I feel like there were a lot of people that commented on it. Do you remember? I don't know if you shot that or if it was your team.
It was certainly someone from my team. I'll be honest with you. We have a lot of shots of Trevor Lawrence coming out of the locker room.
Yeah. And there was this one in particular. I think it might have been during like a national championship game or a conference. Anyway, it was a big game. But the reason I ask is because there just seems to be this kind of randomness, right, to social media and what goes viral. I think there was another clip of ETN, just a run play by ETN. I don't know if you shot that or your team, but these kind of random plays. Every time I see a Clemson clip, at least like when you were at Clemson, I was like, I wonder if Tyson shot that.
There were a lot of them.
But just like these kind of this randomness, and like I think that's the beauty of social media, is that you just put content out. Yeah. And if people like it, they interact with it, and it goes viral.
Yeah.
Do you have any memories of a social media post or tweet or anything that kind of went viral that was just unexpected?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm like really passionate about is in content and social specifically. There's always these content plans of what we should do or how we should accomplish it. And on a game day, everyone has a content plan. We've got this creator going here. We've got this creator going here. This person's going to be in the end zone for this part of the game, all this stuff. It's all planned out and coordinated. But one of the things that I've learned is if those content plans are at 100% capacity, we miss the best stuff. We miss the absolutely best stuff because they're so focused on capturing this single thing that they don't recognize what's going on over here. And there was something that happened at Clemson where this really clicked. Tiger Walk happens at Clemson every game, similar to Cougar Walk that happens at Cougar Canyon here at BYU. And there was a creator that was assigned to just capture Tiger Walk. And as they were kind of capturing Tiger Walk, Coach Sweeney stopped and engaged with this kid, with like a little kid. And the kid, Coach Sweeney tapped him on the shoulder and he kind of wasn't paying attention. And then Coach Sweeney whipped around and kid lit up. And it was the best thing we did that day. And that's not in the content plan.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not in the content plan. The Trevor Etienne, like running, I know the one you're talking about there is like, and that was me of like being in the end zone and like the importance that Travis, Trevor's his little brother.
Yeah.
Travis knew which camera was me.
Yeah.
Right. And he comes into the end zone, he looks at me and he knows it's me. There are things like that just can't be in the content plan. It's just how we go about our business and being able to recognize those things and having a culture of capturing the best moments. I talk about moments a lot, and that's our goal. How do we capture the best moments?
I love that. And it actually reminds me of the Ohio State game that just happened. There's a clip at the end from one of Ohio State's creators. Ohio State actually tweeted the video out when Sawyer had that scoop and score to basically win the game. The content creator, and for anyone that's shot football, it's really hard. Now you have a team of people, but if you're by yourself or whatever, if you're just shooting solo, and there's a scoop and score or a pick six, and you're lined up on the opposite side of the field, you're missing the whole play. At least you feel like it, right? Because the ball's going away from you. What this creator did was he just went wide. He just kept it wide. I don't know if he even had a zoom lens, but he kept it wide, and there was a defensive back in the end zone that kind of reacted in his own way. And it just kind of told the story of like, it's not just about where the ball is. It's about what else, whatever else is happening on the field. It's a very wide shot. So you see all the fans, and then you see this player, he kneels down in the end zone. I think he does this, praise to the heavens. And it really told kind of this like extra story of like, this guy scores this game-winning touchdown, but also his teammates are kind of celebrating in their own little way. And I love that. I love that you have, like you said, you have this content plan, but you can't plan for stuff like that. Like it's a live event. You can't control what's happening in the game. So you have to just kind of adjust to whatever does happen. Switching gears now. So you've since come back. Obviously, you're at BYU now. Have you taken anything that you've learned from Clemson? I imagine you have, and applied it to now what you're doing at BYU.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're doing a lot as a staff, I have to give all the kudos in the world to BYU to buying in to what we do. I mentioned earlier that I was the second social media hire that we ever made at BYU. I now manage a staff of 20 plus, and that is in like a 7-year period is all. And the buy-in from Tom Homo, Brian Santiago, Liz Darger, David Almodovar, of the buy-in to what we do and the value they can bring to the athletic department has made a world of difference. And that opportunity that we have now in the structure that we're in is so unique to be able to have the resources to tell the stories that we need to be able to highlight the student athletes that we have and the program of BYU and what it represents, both from an athletics perspective, but also from a mission of the church and the gospel of Jesus Christ and all of those things. And so it's really a unique opportunity. I know that's kind of tangential to your original question, but I think it's important that we recognize, and that was a big part in me returning to BYU, was knowing the opportunity and the buy-in and what we had the ability to do.
So what are they having? I mean, you say buy-in. Did you have to sell them on anything? What did you kind of bring to the table when you came back from Clemson? You said, these guys are doing this really well. I want to do this also at BYU. Was there anything that really they had to buy into?
Luckily, it didn't take much selling.
Yeah.
They knew the value of what it was. I think the one thing that I brought, that I learned at Clemson, there's a saying at Clemson, and you can take it literal or not, but like best is the standard. And I felt that every day at Clemson, that I, as a creative, was not just trying to improve my work, but I was trying to be the best. That we were trying to make better stuff than Ohio State, Georgia, and all these other schools that we were competing against. And I hope I've brought that to BYU, that the standard is to be the best. The players, the coaches, they have to do their part on the field. We need to do our part. And the same way that they demand excellence, we should as well. I hope that's something that I've brought to BYU and to my staff.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say that you have. Like I said at the very beginning, I think BYU, and I'm biased, right? I mean, I've lived here pretty much my whole life. I think it's better than at least anyone nearby, anyone in the region. And granted, and I say that because I see a lot of regional content. I don't see a lot of East Coast stuff, and I don't follow those teams. I thought Clemson was great when you were at Clemson. I think they're probably still great. But to be honest, I think BYU's content, at least social media content, is top tier. One of the best in the country, if not the best in the country. And I look back to 2016. Granted, I graduated in 2014, so I wasn't on campus at the time. In fact, when I was on campus, I would argue that the social media team, you came on in 2016, right? So you weren't a student, you interned in 2016. I think before then it was even, I don't want to say worse. It just, had fewer resources. I think there was a lot less attention put into social media, to the point where I actually remember a story where I used to do BYU football highlights, just from game footage and just of each game. And I feel like I was approached, I don't remember by who, but I was approached by somebody to use one of my videos in the student athlete building, because they had this wall. I don't know how it looks now, but they had this wall before you went to the balcony that overlooked the practice field, and the wall had just 3 video screens, and they would just replay highlights on the video screens. And I think at the time they didn't really have. I think it was Brandon Despain was there, and that was the only content guy, and so they didn't really have anybody that was creating these kind of highlight videos, and so they reached out to probably other content creators. And I think that's why I got reached out to. But coming from that to where we are now, to where BYU is one of the best in the country, and even from 2016 to now, what has changed? I know priorities have changed, and I know that people have kind of bought in. Your team's a lot bigger. What other changes have kind of taken place?
Yeah, obviously the resource and the buy-in. I think is a perfect storm in some ways. That. This kind of advent of social media, and also us being willing to buy in and to kind of go all in on it at the same time is a big part of it. There's no question related to that. I kind of talked about the attitude within the department of what the expectation is. But one of the things as well is we have a very unique structure at BYU compared to other universities when it comes to creative staff. The way that I view it is that we have an in-house agency within BYU Athletics, a full-scale agency. That's how it's run. That's how it's managed. That's how we talk about it. And instead of our clients being, Aptiv or someone like that, our clients are our teams and our departments, and we service them the same way that an agency would. And that attitude, that's unique to college athletics. But what it allows us to do is to really lean in where we need to. When we have a really high impact piece of content, it allows us to throw all of our resources at it. Whereas at other places, maybe there's a basketball only content creator, or 2 people who work in football, but they don't do anything else, right? That allows us to, when you're going to win a national championship in cross country, that you have the best of the best who are able to kind of tap in those moments. And that unique structure at BYU is something I'm passionate about, really passionate about. When other people reach out to me from across the country of, hey, about this or that, I talk about that almost first and foremost. It provides such a unique opportunity for us to be really, really effective in the creative work we do. And I think it's a differentiator in how we've been able to scale and become what we have.
Looking to get your brand in front of BYU's most engaged fans? The Loyal Cougars podcast and Cougar Board are your perfect match. Cougar Board is the largest online community of BYU fans with thousands of posts every day. The Loyal Cougars podcast is the official podcast of Cougar Board, and we have sponsorship opportunities available for both the podcast and the site. Contact us at sponsorships@loyalcougars.com, and we'll help your message hit home with the Cougar faithful. Again, that's sponsorships@loyalcougars.com. So I think one piece of content, and granted, you have multiple kind of campaigns, social media campaigns, but one that's really taken off this year is The Cut.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think I can say so many good things about it, but I want to ask you first, how did it come about? How did the idea come about? It seems like such a simple concept to, shoot highlights of the game and put them out on social media. But you guys do a lot more than that. And you mentioned you love telling stories. I think The Cut does such a good job of not just showing the best plays from the game, but you're actually telling a story of what happened before the game, during the game, and after the game. Mm-hmm. How was that kind of conceptualized, and how was that brought to the table?
Yeah, I think it was 2017 or 2018, roughly in that time. The Cut, myself and Stuart Call, we're kind of the originators of The Cut, and it's our baby. I mean, it is one of the things I am most proud of in my career. And while a lot of teams do something similar now, at that time they did not. In 2017, 2008, speaking of Clemson did something called The Vlog, which was a really big thing. And that was really it. Like, no one was doing this kind of in-house, hard knocksy to a certain extent type of content. And so that's where it originated, is like, hey, we have this unique access. We have relationships with the coaches, with the players. We have this unique access, and we're the only ones who they're going to let show this or tell this story or different things. And we also thought it could be a significant recruiting advantage as well, like to highlight our teams in that manner. And so that's how it originated. That's like the source and how it is. And boy, I look back at like those from back in the day, and I'm like embarrassed compared to what we do now. But it's good. It's part of the progression of it, and where it is now is just really top tier and something that I'm so proud of, and not only of the content, but of our staff and how we've been able to scale it and make it something that, on Monday nights, people are tweeting, hey, where's The Cut? Yeah. Or, when the game ends, it's like, where's The Cut? Like seconds later.
People are memeing, right? They're putting memes out of
one of my favorite things.
Yeah, like teams that are, this is what the Cut team looks like, and it's like a gif of someone stressing or whatever, sweating. So how much work does go into The Cut? How many man hours? How much equipment? What goes into making a single cut?
For sure. So there are a couple things. One of the things that, and this is probably the biggest progression of The Cut, is that it's a team effort. There was a time where it was like one person would work on The Cut, other people would work on everything else. But now we kind of have a team, and it's a little more formalized, which I think has gone a long way. And so myself and Stuart, we're probably like the executive producers of The Cut. We have a lead producer and editor, Anna Brower. She does a fantastic job with it. She's worked on it the last 2 years. And then we have a host of creators who kind of assist. And so along with that group, we probably have anywhere for a home game from like 5 to 10 shooters. And all of that footage is in The Cut for the most part in some form or fashion. And so the way that it really works is Anna is our lead producer. She puts together shot lists and kind of storylines and different things going into the game. That's distributed to our creative staff. One of the unique things that I think allows us to turn it really quickly is myself, Anna, and Stuart, during the game, we are taking notes of the game. of what is happening, what will go in the cut. And so when the game ends, there is a document of like, this is the cut. And if it's not in the document, it's not in the cut. And so there are things like a significant penalty in the game where it's like could be a game changer, or someone's backed up against a team's backed up against the rock and they get a false start penalty, and we're like, okay, we're going to tell that story within the cut, and all of that's documented leading up to it, and then post game, that's when a lot of the real work starts. And so kind of the workflow is Anna puts together a timeline of the story of the game. And then one of the things that we do as well that allows us to accelerate things is we pass the initial cut to a colorist and a sound designer, another group on our team, who can kind of refine it and polish it. And then Stuart and I kind of give final review, and then it goes out. And it's a grind. I love that Cougar Nation loves it, because there have been literal tears shed at times about the cut and the effort that goes into it. We probably put somewhere around combined, I would guess, 40 hours or so into every single one. But people love it, and we love to do it, and something we're proud of. But that's kind of the foundation.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that it's you're probably looking at hundreds, probably hundreds of hours of video content that you have to cut down into, less than 10 minutes. And that's tough. I totally understand how tough that is. And 40 hours is insane. And I love the attention to detail that you guys put into those, because it's not just like cut, it's not just like highlight event this. You're not just cutting things together. You're actually taking like timelines. Here's an example. I want to say it was the Arizona game. There's a play. I think it was the interception. I think it was the one of the first interceptions. Tanner Wall or whatever. Arizona's driving and they throw an interception in their own red zone, and you start the play off with a drone shot, and just to like the regular observer, like it just looks like a regular drone shot, but it's a drone shot of the actual play. Of the interception, and then it cuts away to the actual interception itself. And that's hard. Like you have to like scrub through all of your video to find that exact play and splice it in right at the exact time. We've talked about some of the feedback that you've gotten from fans that are kind of anticipating the cut.
Yeah.
What type of feedback do you get from fans, and not necessarily BYU fans, but I imagine you guys get feedback from other teams as well. But what's the feedback been like?
I mean, overall, the feedback's really positive, which we're thankful for. And ultimately, we're trying to present something that fans, recruits, people of Cougar Nation, if you will enjoy. And so we've been lucky that the feedback's largely positive. There's some feedback that I'm like, never going to happen. People, one of the ones that this is funny. One of the ones people are like, we should do cuts after losses, and I'm like, no, like
no one's gonna watch that.
There's no story there. The story is we lost.
Yeah.
But there are things like that I love the engagement, and one of the things about that, even the fact that we have a name. That people are like, that piece of content has this name and it has association. If you would have told me in 2018 that would happen, that like games would end, they'd be like, where's the cut? Like, and it's not like, where's the cinematic recap? It's like, where's the cut? Yeah. Like our commitment to that name and that branding is something I'm super proud of. And that's a question we get a lot from other folks in the industry is like, hey, how did you establish this as like this type of content is called this?
Yeah.
And honestly, it's just through persistence and branding, to the extent that one of the things I love recently, we got some feedback. People are like, we need the cut for basketball. And we're like, yeah, we have it. Like we will. And we did one for Kansas last year and different things. But just like that's something I'm really proud of, that we have something that people know by name and it represents a specific type of content. It's really, really cool.
And I was going to ask, what is kind of the future of the cut? I do remember the Kansas game last year, but basketball, there's obviously more games to shoot in, so more of a grind.
No doubt.
Is the plan to offer more, to create more the cuts for basketball.
For sure. Yeah. So the plan for basketball is we label it a game that deserves a cut.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of our philosophy with it. And so, if there's a blowout or something like that, probably not deserve it of and frankly, it's a resource thing. Hey, are we going to dedicate these resources for, this game that's a blowout or something early in the season? But the plan is to do it for games that deserve it. And I think we're going to have some of those coming up. So we're excited about that.
So I mentioned there's this is a Cougar Board sponsored podcast, and so we put out on our insiders group on Cougar Board that we were interviewing you, and if they had any questions to submit them. One of the biggest questions was, is there going to be a season ending the cut? Is that something that merits a cut?
It absolutely does. We look at this past season of BYU football as one of the greatest that there has ever been. And it certainly warrants a season-long cut, and it is in the works. And so TBD on the release of that, but it is in the works, yeah.
Which allows you to potentially use some of your clips from losses.
That's right. Yeah.
It's not just going to waste.
Because now we're telling the story of the entire season. So
awesome.
The people asking for loser cuts, they can get their their taste there.
Is there? I mean, that brings up a good point, right? Because at some point there's kind of a return on investment. I get you're not really investing. You are investing man hours, right?
Yeah.
You're investing time and energy and money in equipment. For you to make that call of like, hey, we're not going to post any losses because, frankly, people don't want to see it. They're not going to watch it. How do you determine like the success of a campaign or the success of a post, or is it just kind of put whatever you can out? The more content, the better, and whatever sticks, and whatever doesn't, we just, we'll eventually stop doing.
Yeah. It's a good question. It's a difficult one, especially when you get attached to certain types of things. So I'll give you an example. Back in the day, Twitter feed was like live coverage, like 3-pointer by Dallin Hall or whatever,
and it was gone in 30 seconds.
And it was gone, and that's changed a lot. And so that's what I try and look at. I try and balance a couple things. I'll say 3 things. I try and balance one. What is things that we can do that forward the mission of BYU Athletics and BYU and ultimately the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There's a lot that we do that it's never going to get the most retweets or the most likes or the most comments, but it's really important to us to highlight the unique, incredible student athletes that we have, or the way that Coach Satake talks to his players and treats them. It is important for us to highlight those things. And so that's one piece that goes into the calculation. Performance of the post certainly is one as well. Do people watch it? Do they like it? Is there something there? And then the other thing too is kind of the technology or the platforms. What do they call for? They call for more vertical video now. You'll notice that the cut is primarily a YouTube thing. And we put it other places, but it's built for YouTube.
Yeah.
Like it's intended to be watched on YouTube.
Well, you can watch it in 4K on YouTube.
Darn right, you can. And you should.
If I see it on Twitter, I won't watch it on Twitter.
100%.
I'll actually go to, in fact, if you're a fan listening to this, go to YouTube. You'll get the entire experience.
Yeah, and to allow us to nerd out for a moment. In order for us to deliver it in 4K is not like a small task.
Yeah.
It's a significant task, both from a storage, processing, editing, like all the things. But boy, is it worth it. It's so good in 4K.
Yeah, and just to give you an example, the recording of this podcast is, it's going to be about 30 minutes. It's like tens, if not, well, it's probably less than 100 gigabytes, but it'll be gigabytes of video in 4K. Mm-hmm. That's just a half hour worth of content. Yep. I mean, you're looking at hundreds of hours of 4K video processing, transferring, exporting. Yeah, it's the insanity of what you guys do is it's hard to overstate.
Yeah, for sure. We love it though. I mean, all the flashy stuff, the memes and everything, I love all that. Yeah. But like ultimately one of the things that I love is that we are historians of BYU, right? One of the things I tell our staff is the cut should be something that when the 5-year-old who was at the game, that in 20 years, when they have their own kid, they can pull up the cut and say, this is where I was, and it will be just as impressive to their kid in that time as it is to them now. Yeah. Like, that's ultimately the goal. Do I think that will be perfect? Probably not. But that is the goal. That is what we're trying to do as historians.
And you mentioned it's a recruiting tool, which I think is fascinating because, it's hard to, as a student videographer, to think that, I'm creating something that could potentially lead to the commitment of a player 18 years, not 18 years from now, but 14 years from now.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think, but I do think, and I think that this could be kind of argued either way, but I do think that kids that are 8, 9, 10, my kid's 9, and he loves the cut, right? He loves watching BYU games. He's actually starting into BYU this year. And I think the cut just kind of, now granted, he's not going to be a college athlete. Probably not. But he loves the cut. And I think that kids around his age are, they may not decide whether to go to BYU because of the cut, but I think it just increases like that fandom among kids that age, that, if they decide when they're 18 between 3 schools and one of them is a school that they grew up being a fan of because of the content that they saw on social media or whatever, I think that's huge.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. This is a timely conversation. We just completed a study we worked with the PR lab on campus at BYU to talk about, fan personas and customer journeys and different things. And one of the things that they found in their study was the importance of a young fan's life and how there are critical moments that are created that make them a fan forever. And I think about that a lot. For me personally, Luke Staley up the sideline to beat Utah, that's when I became a fan.
That was my year, 2001.
That's when Tyson Hutchins, BYU fan. Yeah. I'm going to BYU at that point. And I think about that often now. And I think about it is our job and our responsibility to present those opportunities for young fans. And yeah, there are a lot of things that they're going to consider. But man, if some kid was in the building and he saw the Tommy process scoop and score, and then he watches a cut and he sees that from that angle, and then he sees them celebrate on the sidelines, and he sees the way coach talks to him in the locker room, and he goes, I want to be a part of that. Yeah. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. In marketing, we call those touch points, right?
Yeah,
the more touch points you can 100%. Have, the better. All right. Tyson, thank you so much for joining the show. I think this is fascinating stuff, just coming from a content creation standpoint myself. But I think fans, they love the cut, and I think it's fun for them to kind of see behind the scenes. And so thank you so much for showing us kind of behind the scenes, peeling back those layers and showing us what it takes to put that together. And hopefully we get you on sometime down the road.
We'll love that. Yeah, it's great. We appreciate Cougar Nation and all they do, and their love of the cut and everything else that we do. It means a lot that they're so engaged, and it doesn't get better than Cougar Nation. So I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. All right. Tyson Hutchins, Associate Athletic Director over Creative Strategy at BYU Athletics. Thanks again for joining us.
Absolutely.
Special thanks again to Tyson Hutchins, BYU's Associate Athletic Director over Creative Strategy. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please follow us on all our social media channels and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That'll do it for us today on the Loyal Cougars podcast. I'm your host, Jake Edmonds. We'll see you next time.